is with a feeling of deep pride, pleasure, and satisfaction, as Prime Minister of the newly independent state of Trinidad and Tobago, that I offer you for transmission to Her Majesty the Queen the profound thanks and appreciation of the government, Parliament, and people of this country.
One of the things that we need to appreciate about Eric Williams was that when he came to power, he had that messianic zeal to do constitutional reform.
So many other people like myself, mostly of African origin, were anxiously awaiting the arrival of a leader of that quality and level, who we felt were able to match the best that the expatriates had to offer.
The electricity that he generated when he came back to Trinidad and said he was letting his bucket down was absolutely almost to the point of hysteria, and the way the people responded to him.
My father was the eldest of 12. His father's name was Thomas Henry Williams. He was a postal clerk. His mother was Eliza Boissier. She descended from slaves of the French de Boissier family. He was a disciplinarian. When I was growing up, I was terrified of him. But as I got older and became a teenager, he was my greatest confidant. I could speak to him about boyfriends, about anything. And he was always extremely loving. It was quite, amazing, because not only was he a scholar and very scholarly when he was going to school, but he was also an athlete. He was captain of the QRC football team, and he was on his Oxford University cricket team. He did like to play a card game with my family called Romoli. He enjoyed that. He played that every weekend.
And Eric Williams was not a prime minister who was ever worried about the circumstances around him. He was very much an academic, because Williams was a scholar.
He would resort to the library. That was his kingdom.
Reading, just reading. He has 25 years of diaries, no personal stuff in it. Capitalism and Slavery actually emanated from his doctoral thesis at Oxford, which he wrote at the age of 27, which is really phenomenal.
He was coming down the steps of the library on Pembroke Street. Gum's hands was around his shoulders. And I said, Chief, yeah, I wrote it. I said, when I leave this big belly pudigi man and come and meet me in the square. That was my first encounter with him. I said, we don't want you in the library, we want you in Woodford Square, which at that time was the headquarters for the rabble-rousers and loudmouths like myself.
He had these incredible lectures. That's why they call it Woodford Square the University of Woodford Square, because he would go there and people would pack the place. He did it on the forum of the Teachers Association. And what he was doing was helping people to make sense of their history and their story.
When he first came to power in 1956, only 14,000 students in Trinidad and Tobago could go to school, and they were paying. So he ensured that what he said was to educate is to emancipate.
And a lot of local, majority Afro-Trinidadians got scholarships. So the emphasis was on educating.
So therefore, he understood that if you were going to bring people out of their situation as full-fledged citizens of independent Trinidad and Tobago, they needed to be educated. So free secondary school education was one of them. Democracy, independent press, you should be appreciative of that, an independent judiciary, and also ethnic and religious tolerance and respect, not to mention energy. And energy is all we're talking about in this world.
His biggest challenge perhaps came in 1970 when the Black Power uprisings took place throughout the country. And Williams responded with a state of emergency, and with a number of other measures. He banned Stokely Carmichael from coming to Trinidad and Tobago.
So there was no justification. What the Black Power movement, just don't forget how it started in Trinidad. They didn't go at the government. The attack was on the Roman Catholic Church and the banks.
We became part of a global reckoning, really, of the discrimination based on race. Black power in the late 60s, the marginalization of people who had been previously enslaved and who 100 years later had still not found a place around the table of power. All of those forces were coming together with the needs in Trinidad of young, black, Indian people who could not find a place, who had the promise of education being delivered, went to university, could not find a job, found the institutional racism, lack of opportunity.
His admonition to the nation, which I've abbreviated here, there can be no Mother India and no Mother Africa, no Mother England and no dual loyalties. There can be no Mother China, no Mother Syria and no Mother Lebanon. A nation, like an individual, can have only one mother, and mother cannot discriminate between her children. So you got to look at the history in order to appreciate it, I think.
One of the big issues about Williams was his attempt to resign as political leader of the PNM in 1973. Williams also spoke during that particular parliament about millstones around his neck, and there were some backbenchers that he was very unhappy with.
That period prior to his passing was a period of intense protest. Public servants, everybody, they were just, and you often wonder if he had not died, whether the next election, which was due in '81, whether he would have stayed in office.